Hello again. Thanks for stopping by Max's Cards and Dice Dugout. This is episode number 84, and it's Downey Games Fast Action Racing, continuing the 1991 stock car project with race number 12 at Sonoma. Before we set the field, let's take a look at the standings as we head into race 12. Bobby Hamilton is holding on to the lead, 6 points ahead of Ricky Rudd. Ricky Rudd has 2 wins and has really cut the gap. In fact, things are pretty tight amongst the top 5 drivers with only 19 points separating them. So the top 10 is Hamilton, Rudd, Gant, Allison, Wallace, Mast, Kowicki, Kyle Petty, Marlin, and Ernie Irvin. And the Dale Earnhardt watch continues. He's moved up 1 spot from 15th. He's now in 14th place. All right, so this is, let me get this out of the way. This is the first road course of the season at Sonoma, and the track is Sears Point. It's a 2.52 mile road course, Grand Prix course, I guess you'd say. In real life, this race was known as the Banquet Frozen Foods 300, took place on June 9th, 1991. Pole sitter that day was Ricky Rudd, and the winner was Davey Allison. And here at Sonoma, for Fast Action Racing, both contact and mechanical get a -1 modifier. All right, so the first thing, as always, is to shuffle the cards, give them a cut, and we'll set the grid. All right. And here's the grid. Davey Allison, Rusty Wallace, Ted Musgrave, Chad Little, Jimmy Means, Sterling Marlin, Bill Elliott, Richard Petty, Terry Labonte, Joe Rootman, Ricky Rudd, Rick Mast, Jeff Bodine, Rick Wilson, Bobby Hillen Jr., Alan Kowicki, Morgan Shepherd, Ernie Irvin, Larry Pearson, Derek Cope, Dave Marcus, Mark Martin, Kyle Petty, Hutch Strickland, Dale Jarrett, Harry Gant, Stanley Smith, Brett Bodine, Michael Waltrip, Darrell Waltrip, Lake Speed, Mickey Gibbs, Ken Schrader, points leader Bobby Hamilton, Dale Earnhardt, and Jimmy Spencer. All right, so the first thing we'll do is we will check for the pole sitter using the red and white die, reading the white die first. That's a 54. And 54 is Brett Bodine. So Brett Bodine will be the pole sitter here for our replay. I'll give him the leader marker for now. And as always, there's a lot of bookkeeping, so you'll have to excuse me for that. We'll put down Brett Bodine as the pole sitter. And he is immediately going to face a challenge. Now for this first challenge, the pole sitter, and only this first challenge, the pole sitter gets a +1. We're going to be looking at the green race rating, and that challenge is coming from 34 Harry Gant. Okay, so Harry Gant's an 11. Brett Bodine is a 10 for this one. So Gant is challenging at a +1. He needs a 6 to 12 to take the lead. He rolls a 7, and Harry Gant is now the race leader. Right? Okay, this first check is going to be a check for mechanical issues. We're going to pick a random driver in the 4 adjacent, and we will check the mechanical ratings, which are the red numbers. And here at Sonoma, or Sears Point, they'll get a -1. So it's 45. That's Darrell Waltrip. Darrell Waltrip's 12 o'clock is Rick Mast. His 3 o'clock is Bobby Hillin Jr. 6 o'clock is Ricky Rudd. And his 9 o'clock is Terry Labonte. Okay, so if the die is equal to the mechanical rating, the driver's going to get a red lap marker. He's gone down. He's had a mechanical issue. He's gone down several laps. If the die roll is greater than his mechanical rating, he is forced to retire. All right, so we start with Darrell Waltrip. He is an 8. That becomes a 9. He rolls a 9, and he is going to go several laps down. He fails. All right, so he gets a red lap marker. All right, so Darrell Waltrip gets a red lap marker. So he failed, and he gets a red. Next is Rick Mast. He's a 7. That becomes a 6. Actually, I'm wrong on that. Darrell Waltrip was an 8. He became a 7. He is not lapped because it's a -1. He is forced to retire. Already making a mistake. So Darrell Waltrip's out. So he's failed, but DNF. Okay, Rick Mast is a 7. That becomes a 6. He needs a 5 or less. He rolls an 8, and he's forced to retire. Fail. DNF. Bobby Hillin Jr. is a 7. That becomes a 6. He needs a 5 or less. He rolls a 6. And he's forced to come in, go behind the wall. Goes down several laps. So fail. And a red lap marker. Ricky Rudd is an 11. That becomes a 10. He needs a 9 or less. He rolls an 11. He's forced to retire. Bobby Hillin gives a sigh of relief with that. So Ricky Rudd's a DNF. And lastly is Terry Labonte, who's a 5. Becomes a 4. That means he needs a 3 or less. And that was a pretty tough mechanical check for all these drivers. Only one of them survived, and he went several laps down, and that being Bobby Hillin Jr. So Terry Labonte is also forced to retire. And Harry Gant remains the race leader. And now he'll face a challenge, and that challenge is coming from 41, Brett Bodine, who was the pole sitter. Okay, Bodine's a 9. Harry Gant's an 11. He's challenging at a -2. He needs a 9 to 12 to be successful. He rolls a 3 and fails. Harry Gant remains the leader. Okay, now we're going to have a phase of green flag racing. This is the second phase of the race. And we're going to select a random driver and 4 adjacents, and they're going to go up against the leader, Harry Gant. So the random is a 52, and that's Lake Speed. Speed. His 12 o'clock is Rick Wilson. His 3 o'clock is Alan Kowicki. His 6 o'clock is Jeff Bodine. And his 9 o'clock is Joe Rootman. Okay, we'll be going up against Harry Gant with all these drivers using the green number, the green racing rating, and the quality pass matrix. So first is Lake Speed. He's a 6. Harry Gant's an 11. That's a -5. That's an automatic failure, but he remains on the lead lap at a -5. So that's a failure. Harry Gant remains the leader. Rick Wilson is an 8. Harry Gant's an 11. His challenge is at a -3. He needs a 10 to 12. He rolls an 11, and we have a new race leader in Rick Wilson. Okay, so now the checks will go up against Wilson for the rest of this phase. So it's Alan Kowicki. He's an 11. Rick Wilson's an 8. He's challenging at a +3. He needs a 4 to 12. He rolls a 3 and fails. Rick Wilson remains the race leader. Next is Jeff Bodine. He's an 11. Wilson's an 8. He's challenging at a +3. He needs a 4 to 12. He rolls a 10. And Jeff Bodine takes the lead. Okay, so the final check will be Joe Rootman up against Jeff Bodine. Rootman's a 9, Bodine's an 11, challenging at a -2. He needs a 9 to 12. He rolls a 10. And after the green flag racing phase, Joe Rootman is the race leader. Okay, now we're going to have a phase of green flag pit stops. It's a random driver and 4 adjacent. They go up against the leader, and we're looking at the blue pit crew rating. So the random driver is 63, Dale Earnhardt. Okay, his 12 o'clock is Morgan Shepherd. His 3 o'clock wraps around to Rusty Wallace. His 6 o'clock is Alan Kowicki. And his 9 o'clock is Rick Wilson. All right, so first it's going to be Earnhardt. He's a 10. Rootman is an 8. This challenge comes at a +2. So Earnhardt needs a 5 to 12 to take the lead. He rolls a 7. And Dale Earnhardt takes the lead. Okay, next check is Morgan Shepherd. Shepherd's an 8. Earnhardt's a 10. Challenge is at a -2. He needs a 9 to 12. He rolls an 8 and fails. Dale Earnhardt remains the leader. Okay, next is Rusty Wallace. He's an 8. Earnhardt's a 10. Challenge is at a -2. He needs a 9 to 12. He rolls snake eyes and fails. Dale Earnhardt remains the leader. Next is Alan Kowicki. He's an 8. Earnhardt's a 10. Another challenge at a -2. 9 to 12. He rolls a 9, and Alan Kowicki takes the lead. Okay, so now the final challenge is coming from Rick Wilson. He's a 7. Kowicki's an 8. He's challenging at a -1. He needs an 8 to 12. He rolls a 6 and fails. So after the green flag pit stops, Alan Kowicki is the race leader. Okay, so now the next phase, We're going to check to see if there were any infractions during the green flag pit stops, which would cause someone to have to come in, come in for a stop and go. All right, so that is a random driver and 4 adjacent. It could include the leader, and we will be checking the pit crew rating. So it's a 22. That's going to be Chad Little. It's 12 o'clock is Kyle Petty. His 3 o'clock is Dale Jarrett. 6 o'clock is Mark Martin. And his 9 o'clock is Larry Pearson. Okay, so once again, we're looking at the blue pit crew rating, but this time we're not using the quality pass matrix. We're just going to roll the die. If the die is lower or equal to the pit crew rating, you're good. If it's higher, you're going to have to come in for a stop and go, and you'll be 1 lap down. Okay, so first is Chad Little. He's a 7. All right, so he needs a 7 or less. He rolls snake eyes, and he passes. Kyle Petty is a 10. He needs a 10 or less. He rolls a 3. He passes. Dale Jarrett. Dale Jarrett is a 7. He needs a 7 or less. He rolls a 7 and passes. Mark Martin is an 8. He needs an 8 or less. He rolls a 6. He passes. And Larry Pearson is a 4. He needs a 4 or less. He rolls a 5, unfortunately. And he has some sort of infraction during his pit stop. Has to come in for a stop and go, and he goes a lap down. So he failed the green lap marker. All right, so now, after all that, Alan Kowicki is still the race leader. And between phases 3 and 4, there are 2 consecutive challenges. So his first challenge is coming from 14, Derek Cope. All right, so Cope, and we're looking at the green race rating again. Cope's a 7, Kowicki's an 11. That's a -4. He needs an 11 or 12. He rolls a 9 and fails. Kowicki remains the race leader. Excuse me, now his second challenge is coming from 51, Jeff Bodine. All right, Jeff Bodine is an 11. Alan Kowicki's an 11. So this challenge is coming at 0. He needs a 7 to 12. He rolls an 8. And Jeff Bodine is the new race leader here at Sears Point. So he passes. It's Jeff Bodine. It's the new race leader. Okay, now we're going to check for contact. And remember, there is a -1 modifier for contact. We're going to select a random driver and 4 adjacent, and we'll see if anybody has any contact issues. So, and this can include the leader. We get a 42. 42 is Joe Rootman. That's Rootman. His 12 o'clock is Michael Waltrip. His 3 o'clock is Lake Speed. His 6 o'clock is Brett Bodine. And his 9 o'clock is Dale Jarrett. Okay, so going to look at the yellow contact rating. That gets a -1 modifier here. You need to be lower than the contact rating to be safe. If you're equal to it, you're going to get a yellow lap marker, which means you've had contact. had to go behind the wall and you're several laps down. If you are greater than your contact rating, you're going to be forced to retire. All right, so the first check is Joe Rootman. He's a 9. That becomes an 8. He needs a 7 or less. He rolls an 8. So he's going to go several laps down. So Rootman fails and gets a yellow lap marker. Michael Waltrip is a 9. That becomes an 8. He needs a 7 or less. He rolls a 6 and passes. Lake Speed is a 7. That becomes a 6. He needs a 5 or less. He rolls boxcars and is forced to retire. If I can get his card out of here. All right, so Lake Speed's out of the race. All right, so, and that's Jeff Bodine, who's the leader. Speed failed, DNF. Next is Brett Bodine. Now, his rating is an 8, becomes a 7. He needs a 6 or less to be safe. He rolls a 9, he's forced to retire. So Brett Bodine fails, DNF. And finally, Dale Jarrett. He's a 5. That becomes a 4. He needs a 3 or less. Rolls a 6, and he's forced to retire as well. Things haven't been going well for Jarrett the last few races. All right, so Dale Jarrett failed, and DNF. Okay, so now we got a series of pit stops under caution. But this is a little bit different now. It's the race leader and the adjacent drivers plus 1 random. So they're going up against the race leader, I should say. So it's going to be Rick Wilson at 12 o'clock. Bobby Hamilton at 3. 6 o'clock wraps around up to Ken Schrader. And 9 o'clock comes over to Bill Elliott. And then we have to select a random driver. And that random driver is 63, Dale Earnhardt. All right, so these are all going up against the leader, looking at the blue pit crew rating. So first, it'll be Rick Wilson. Wilson is a 7. Jeff Bodine's an 8. Challenging at a -1, needs an 8 to 12. He rolls a 4 and fails. And Jeff Bodine remains the race leader. Next is Bobby Hamilton. Bobby Hamilton is an 8. Jeff Bodine's an 8. This challenge is at 0. He needs a 7 to 12. He rolls an 11. Bobby Hamilton's the new race leader. Pass. He's the leader. Okay. Ken Schrader is an 8. Bobby Hamilton's an 8. This challenge is at a 0. So Schrader needs a 7 to 12. He rolls a 5 and, a 5 and fails. And Bobby Hamilton remains the race leader. Next is Bill Elliott. He's an 8. Bobby Hamilton's an 8. Challenge is at 0. Needs a 7 to 12. He rolls a 6 and fails. Bobby Hamilton remains the race leader. And the final challenge comes from Dale Earnhardt. He's a 10. Hamilton's an 8. That's at a +2. He needs a 5 to 12 to take the lead. He rolls a 4, and he fails. How about that? And after the pit stops, Bobby Hamilton is the race leader, and now he'll face a challenge right before we head into the closing laps action. And that challenge is coming from 42, Joe Rootman. Can't be him because he's more than a lap down. And 62, Alan Kowicki, who's led this race. All right, so he's presenting the challenge. He's an 11. Bobby Hamilton's a 10. He's challenging at a +1. He needs a 6 to 12. He rolls a 9. And Alan Kowicki has the lead again. So he passes. And Kowicki has the lead. Okay, so now we're going into the closing laps action. We're going to see if there's a mechanical check. These are all going to involve the leader. All right, here at Sonoma, on a roll of 8 to 12, there is a mechanical check. We rolled a 6, so that is a no. Okay, but now Kowicki is going to face another challenge, and that is coming from 62. Well, that's him. He can't challenge himself. 12, Larry Pearson. Larry Pearson is challenging to get back on the lead lap. Well, I can tell you without rolling, he's going to fail that because he is a -9. And what that actually means is he wasn't challenging to get his lap back. He was challenging to stay 1 lap down. So he gets a second green lap marker because the green lap markers are cumulative. So mechanical check was against, or there was no mechanical check. Larry Pearson presented the challenge. He failed and got his second green lap marker. All right, now we're going to check to see if there is contact here in the closing sections, and that'll happen on a roll of a 9 to 12. And that is a 4. So that's also a no. Okay, so we can clear that out. And now the next phase is pit crew, pit stops under caution. Well, that did not happen because we didn't have any contact in this phase. So now Kowicki is going to face another challenge. So he's still the leader. And he's going to face another challenge coming from 11, Davey Allison, who won this race in real life, or IRL, if you will. So it's Davey Allison. Okay, he's an 11. Kowicki's an 11. He's challenging at 0. He needs a 7 to 12. He rolls a 9 and takes the lead here at Sears Point. So he passes and is the new race leader. Okay. Now we have to see if there is a final end of race pit crew event. Okay. It says void if pit stops under caution have taken place, but they have not. All right. So here, pit crew event happens on a 9 to 12. We roll a 5, so that's also a no. So it's been a pretty clean race other than the mechanical issues, or no, rather the contact that took out quite a few drivers earlier. All right, so now, that event's NA. Now we check to see if there is a final phase of green flag racing. And here at Sonoma, that happens on a 7 to 12. That's a 9, so that's going to be a yes. So that's going to be the adjacent cars to the leader plus 1 random car. So does not include Larry Pearson because he's 2 laps down. So it's Rusty Wallace is 12 o'clock. Mark Martin is 3 o'clock. Whip around up to Dave Marcus. He's at 6 o'clock. And we go over here for 9 o'clock, and that's Bobby Hamilton. And the random driver is going to be 23, Kyle Petty. All right, so we're looking at the green race ratings. First challenge comes from Rusty Wallace. He's an 11. Davey Allison is an 11. He's challenging at a 0. Needs a 7 to 12. He rolls a 6 and fails. Davey Allison remains the race leader. Next is Mark Martin. He's also an 11. Davey Allison's an 11. Martin needs a 7 to 12. He rolls boxcars and takes the lead in this closing phase. Okay, next is Dave Marcus. He's a 6. Mark Martin's an 11. That's a -5. Automatic failure, but he remains on the lead lap. Next is Bobby Hamilton. He's a 10. Mark Martin's an 11. He's challenging at a -1. He needs an 8 to 12. He rolls a 6 and fails. Mark Martin remains the leader. Kyle Petty's the final challenge. They're both 11s. He's challenging at a 0. He needs a 7 to 12. He rolls a 3 and fails. So after all that, Mark Martin is the race leader, and he's going to face a final challenge. All right, and so we're down to the final nitty-gritty here. And this is going to be adjacent drivers to the leader who are not lapped, going by the rules of priority, okay? So Mark Martin's 12 o'clock is Chad Little. He's an 8. His 3 o'clock is Bill Elliott. He's an 11. Now we know no drivers are rated higher than 11, so I'm not even going to continue the rest of this. The challenge is coming from Bill Elliott. So that's the final challenge. Allison and Sterling Marlin are 11s. I'll just say this. They are 11s, but using the rules of priority, Bill Elliott at 3 o'clock supersedes Marlin and Allison. All right, so final challenge is coming from Bill Elliott. So they're down to the last few laps. They're fighting back and forth. They're both 11s, so this challenge is at a 0. On a 7 to 12, Bill Elliott will take the lead. And anything else, Mark Martin will hold him off and be the winner here at Sonoma. So 7 to 12 for Elliott. It's a 6. Mark Martin holds him off and is your race winner here at Sears Point Raceway in Sonoma, California. So Mark Martin is the winner. So I'm going to take him off. This is what I always call the fun part, and put the marker there for him. Now, second place, of course, goes to the driver who failed that final challenge. That'll be Bill Elliott. And then from here, we go adjacent drivers using the rules of priority. Okay, so Chad Little's at 8. Sterling Marlin's at 6. He's an 11. He'll be next. Then it'll be Davey Allison. And then Chad Little. Okay? So that's that. So we got our top 5, I guess you'd say. All right, so now we stay in the groove, which is going to be this outer groove that the winner was in, and we go clockwise and we remove drivers based on their race rating. So next is going to be Rusty Wallace, because he's an 11. 11, Ken Schrader, Ernie Irvin, Morgan Shepherd, Dale Earnhardt, Alan Kulwicki, and Jeff Bodine. Okay, so now we're going to go around same groove and look for 10s. And that would be Bobby Hamilton. Next would be 9s. 8s would be Ted Musgrave, Jimmy Spencer. 7 would be Derek Cope. 6 would be Dave Marcus. And the only remaining driver on the lead lap in that groove is Stanley Smith. Okay, so now we move into this groove. So we move right up to here and go clockwise. Once again, we're moving by race rating. So that'll be Kyle Petty Hutch Strickland. And that's it for the 11s. 10s. No. 9s. No. 8s. Mickey Gibbs. And then Rick Wilson. Okay, so, and then Jimmy Means with this 2. All right, so now the only remaining drivers on the middle groove or middle whatever section, they're lapped. So now we move in, and the next one's going to be Harry Gant because we're going clockwise from this spot. That's the closest spot to the leader. So it'll be Harry Gant, Michael Waltrip, and Richard Petty. All right, so now we go back out to the winner's groove and remove lap drivers based on how many laps they're down. So that's going to be Larry Pearson. He was 2 laps down. Then we come in here. Next would be Joe Rootman because he's got a yellow lap marker. And then finally on the grid, last one removed will be Bobby Hillin Jr. And we add the drivers who did not finish to the bottom of the stack. And here for race 12 at Sonoma, or Sears Point Raceway in Sonoma, California, the Banquet Frozen Foods 300. Your top 10 are winner Mark Martin, Bill Elliott, Sterling Marlin, Davey Allison, Chad Little. That's your top 5. 6 is Rusty Wallace. 7 is Ken Schrader. 8 is Ernie Irvin. 9 is Morgan Shepherd. And 10 is Dale Earnhardt. So that's it for this race. The next race will take us to the track closest to me, and that would be Pocono. That'll be race 13. The next time we have fast action racing on the table. If you hung out with me, thanks for sticking it out, and I'll be back again in the near future with another video replay. And until then, take care.